All right, bring them in, round them up. Woo! How was lunch? Was it good? Cool, everyone got fed? Awesome, that's good. Okay, really quickly before I now, well, first of all, Tara and I, when we were walking back to our room, we ran into Rebecca and Roger. There's a lot of R's, Rebecca, Roger, Renee, Roger. We ran into them on the way back, and they were like super excited to be here. They planned on coming to the morning, and then they're going to see Roger's mom. Like, if we would have known it was going to be such an amazing event, like, we would have stayed for the whole event. But they're like, we want to join your group. And Tara and I look at each other like, what group? Whatever group you got. So I let them know that we were going to be giving them a full ride tuition to the house flipping formula program. And we're going to work with them. I love this guy. I love that guy. And we're going to be working with them and help them create a successful house flipping and or wholesaling, but the real estate investing business. I mean, he's already got the skills. He's a contractor. She's an agent. Like, we can do this. So that's exciting. That's what it's all about. All right. So a lot of you guys have come from far away. Let's see. Who thinks they've come from the furthest? Where do we got? Where are you from? Rochester. Rochester? Connecticut? South Africa. Boom. All right, Leon and Manjush, come on up here. Is he here? He's not here? All right. We'll let you guys come up in a minute then. Okay, totally blew the thunder for me there. All right. So anyway, these guys came all the way from South Africa, so I'm going to bring them up for 1 or 2 minutes here in a little bit, sometime today. And it's pretty cool, right? Like, we are international. It's interesting when I'm talking on the podcast, like, I know that the stats show there's people in all countries, but I don't know. You just don't really think you're talking to people in another country. So it's pretty cool to hear what they had to share. So we'll bring them up and we'll talk for a minute. All right, this next individual. All right, let's be here. Okay, this next individual, many of you may know from last year's Flip Packing Live. So Andy and I had this idea to start the 7-figure group a couple years ago. We decided to go for it, and I'll be honest, it was hard to do because we weren't sure. We believed we could help people get there, but we didn't totally know. So these guys reached out. Mike Simmons is someone that I'd known for a while. They're like, hey, like, we want to do this. We want to be a part of your guys' group. I'm like, oh, but you guys are kind of experienced. Like, and I just got, I was a little anxious. They came aboard. They were doing about 300,000 or so. And they came in. They were an amazing asset to the group, helped a lot of people. And we came up with this competition to see who could be the first one to get to $1 million. And, people put you on the spot, you commit to things, and like, yeah, whoever wins gets a trip to Hawaii. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do that. Then by the next trip, somehow, the next event somehow turned into a trip to Fiji. And me, like, not knowing any better, I'm like, okay, sure. Then when they sent me the bill for the trip to Fiji. So anyway, these Mike Cowper and Mike Simmons, they were the winners last year. They got to 7 figures first. And at the 7-figure event, it was crazy. We were talking about, the guy, Roger Bannister. Who's around the 4-minute mile? Was that Roger Bannister? I don't know how that came. We have these things in our brains somewhere, and you can pull it out every once in a while. So Roger Bannister runs a 4-minute mile, and then before you know it, everyone's running a 4-minute mile. And that's kind of what's happened in this 7-figure group. These guys kind of led the charge. They were the first to get 7 figures. And now this year we have 20 people there. It's just absolutely amazing. But absolutely incredible investors. They've been amazing to this community. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mike Cowper. Yeah! Woo! They wanted to speak separately this time. They're like, we're not Siamese twins, so.
Well, okay, so last year if you were there, a lot of people actually reached out to me and go, hey, why are you just standing over there on the side twiddling your thumbs for like the first half hour? So we decided this time around that we would actually speak a little bit separately. That way, I mean, the way we actually structured our business is two different entities, right? I handle the front end, the acquisition side, phone rings to contract. Mike manages the marketing, making the phone ring, as well as the disposition side and any project management that takes place. So we decided that it made more sense for us to be able to add more value to kind of separate what we do and kind of be able to do an entire presentation on what works for us and hopefully put you guys in a position to be successful. So, excuse me, like Justin had said a little bit earlier, I shared this with the seven-figure group. I bought my first investment property in November of 2014. So I haven't even invested all that long. What you're gonna find is if you put yourself in the right position with the right people, you can accomplish amazing things in a very short amount of time. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to be in the position and put myself in those positions where I was around people that are better than me. And everyone in this room is in a position where they are gonna be around people that are better than them in some fashion or another. You might be awesome at one thing. I'm good at sales, but I'm not good at every single part of our business. I have no idea how the marketing works. Mike's great at that. So we were able to find each other, me reaching out to him. So a little background on me. I started my real estate investing career in November of 2014. I went to a RIA group in September, joined a mentorship program, ended up learning from those people about rentals. I thought that was the right position for me at the time. Bought my first rental 2 months later. Realized that the MLS was a little bit more competitive than I would like. And me being a salesperson, I knew I could do a better route and find a better way. So I started reaching out to people on bigger pockets. Started networking, trying to find different people. Met Mike, who just happened to be looking to potentially expand his business. I offered to work for him for free. He was gracious enough to actually offer me compensation for acquiring properties for his business. Did that for a few months. It was awesome, right? I was doing well on the acquisition side. He was doing well on the disposition side and actually making a majority of the money, but he was also taking a majority of the risk. And that's the one thing people don't think about sometimes is that the reason you can partner with people and do different things is because they're willing to take a certain amount of risk. And a lot of people, I think Bill and everyone was talking about when you start off flipping, sometimes you have to give up more than you would care to because you might not be in a position to show and share your expertise until you've proved it a few times. So I worked with him. We decided to make it a partnership because he had talked to me about basically, what's your long-term plan? And I told him, it's not today, it's not tomorrow, but at some point in time, I'm not an employee. I'm gonna wanna do this on my own. And like Steve and David just mentioned, we weren't gonna do it if it was 1 + 1 = 2. We had to make sure it was an exponential growth. So we combined our forces, we took the business to about $300,000 a year, joined the seven-figure flipping group, and then we were able to exponentially increase that to over $1 million a year. So the moral of the story is, put yourself in uncomfortable positions. It's not easy to get in the right room sometimes with the people that are better than you or might have different expertise. But like Andy had said very earlier at the beginning, everyone has something to share. You might not realize it. Even in the seven-figure flipping group, we've got a lot of people that came in and were kind of nervous about, hey, what am I going to share with everyone? How am I going to add value? And they just talked about their business. And every single person added value because everyone has some little secret sauce that they don't realize is there. So just to kind of go off of that, you have permission, like Andy had mentioned last year and did it again today. You have permission to be successful. Put yourself in the right spot. You're in it right now. Keep putting yourself in that uncomfortable spot so you can grow. Because if you're doing something that makes you uncomfortable, you're very likely doing something right. So kind of into our business a little bit. This is something I share with our sales team. Every time someone new comes on board, what I'm going to talk about today is basically taking a lead from when the phone rings to when you get it under contract. And I'm going to try and dig as deep into this as I can. So our objective at Return on Investments is to sign as many purchase agreements as possible that we can monetize, which is the key point there. Anyone can put something under contract. You want $1 million? I'll give you 2. Awesome, it's under contract. We need contracts that we can monetize either through assigning to another investor or deciding to do the renovations ourselves in-house and flipping it. Now, Mike and I try our hardest to never have to flip a property ever. That's not our personality. There's a ton of people in here that like doing that, like to see that transformation. I don't care about it at all. I like to turn deals as fast as I can, like to go on a lot of appointments, like to talk to a lot of people and have a lot of opportunity. So our objective is to get as many of those purchase agreements and then actually sign them to somebody else so they can use their specialty and do the full renovation and turn it to something better, either flip or landlord rental property. So How do we do that? We start off with the lead intake. Now, there's a few different options out there. Now, there's the best option, there's the worst option, but there's different options. So no matter where you're at as a business owner and an entrepreneur, you can use some of these ones, and some will get better results than others, but it doesn't stop you from being able to use them. So the different options that we know of, and there might be different ones, but these are the main ones. Live answer. This is hands down the absolute best way to answer your phones and answer your leads. If you can have someone there to be able to answer a person when they're calling in real time, you're gonna save yourself a ton of time, not only now, but later, because I'm sure many of you have used different options that I'll talk about next, but if you don't get a hold in that first time, you end up in the back and forth that can end up taking way more time than it might be worth, especially someone that doesn't even care. Just said, hey, take me off your list. They hung up, they didn't wanna leave a message. So live answer is the absolute best. We didn't entirely listen to Andy last year. We tried some different systems and it didn't work out. Trust us in the amount of money we lost, live answer if you can. So the other option out there is an answering service. These are the next best thing probably than rather just going straight to voicemail. What you're gonna find is they're typically a little bit more robotic. They're not gonna be able to be the best face for your business, but what they are able to do for you is answer live, and if you use a certain different ones, sometimes schedule an appointment for you. So there's different services out there. I'm not getting to get into those. If you want to, I'll be at the round table later and can tell you what we've tried and what's worked and what hasn't, but answering service is the next best option because you're gonna talk to someone live and they're gonna be able to at least read from a script. They're not gonna know your business. They're not gonna be able to answer your questions typically, but they are gonna talk with somebody and get that initial information up front and find out, so you don't necessarily have to turn it into the purgatory of trying to find out if it's even a real lead. So the next one is voicemail. A lot of people work full-time jobs. This is how we started our business. We went not straight to voicemail, it rang, but it went to voicemail, and we tried to call them back as quickly as humanly possible. There were times where I'd call them back within a minute or two. Because when I first started with Mike, I was answering the phones and going on appointments until we were able to scale up. So what you're gonna find is that voicemail will work, especially if you do a decent voicemail recording to allow them to understand what your business is, what you're looking for, what you're trying to do, and what you're talking about. But sometimes people just hang up and then you never reach them again. So these are the different options that you have in terms of lead intake. Phone calls coming in, and how do we make these into money? So those are your different options, and here's kind of the purpose of a lead intake person. They are your very first point of contact with your business. Now think about whenever you've bought something from someone or any impression you've ever gotten. That first impression is very important. This is their very first contact with your business. This is your first impression. Other than your piece of mail, depending on what you're kind of using. Ours is a little yellow piece of junk that I don't know why they even call it sometimes, but it works. So this is the first time that they're gonna interact with an actual person in your business. So we take that very seriously because that's the first time for us to be able to set the tone and how is this gonna work for you and how can we help your problem. The next phase of this is once they've kind of gotten that first initial contact with you, what are we trying to do with this? We're trying to build rapport. We're trying to establish the initial expectations. Make sure we are the right fit. You'll end up getting a lot of calls. A lot of people aren't the right fit for us. As investors, we don't buy every single deal because it's got to be a combination of a few different things that allow us to help solve a problem. We're all in the problem-solving business here. And if they don't have a problem or they don't perceive their problem to be strong enough, we're not the right solution unless we can help clarify what that might look like. So being able to build rapport allows them to take their defenses down and allows us to try and understand what their problems might be. Now, the other part is when people are talking with us, most people don't buy and sell a whole lot of real estate. A lot of people only have one or two houses their entire lifetime. So they want to know what it's going to look like. What are the processes? What is this going to look like for us? How is this process going to look? How is this going to play out? What do you expect from me? What should I expect from you? The more information we can give them in irrelevant terms and always trying to redirect back to their motivation, the more information we can give them to take that unknown doubt away, the more they're going to be comfortable with us as a business and being able to open up to us, which helps us understand their problem more because they're comfortable working with us. Gathering information. That's really one of the key points of the lead intake. We need to know the information about the house. This is probably the least important part of it because a lot of stuff can be looked up on public records, but it's a good segue into getting them talking, and they can start telling you, I've got 4 bedrooms, I've got 2 bathrooms, I've got 1,500 square feet, I got a basement. Just get them talking, get them used to talking to us. And then while we're doing that, we're prepping them to be comfortable with us. We really want to know their motivation. Why are you trying to sell your house? Why don't you list this with a real estate agent? That is hands down one of my favorite questions ever to ask. Why don't you just list with an agent, man? This is an awesome house you got here. Kind of like Andy said, right? Why are you selling such a nice property? Why don't you list this with an agent? It sounds like it's a great deal. You'd make way more money with a homeowner. Well, A, B, C, D. They start telling you. They'll start spilling the exact reasons that you can help them where an agent might not be able to do that. And if they say, well, I actually was thinking about it, awesome. We work with a great agent. You should use the one that we use, because then you can't just pick someone out of a phone book. You know they're going to perform. And what we always try to do is schedule an appointment. I'm going to get to that. I should jump myself. We also want to know what their timeline is. What is your actual timeline for selling your house? You want to sell it in a year? You want to sell it in 2 years? You want to sell it in 30 days? That's important. That's a little tickler that you can actually understand their motivation more. Hey, if they try and tell you their house is great, I don't really have any reason to sell, but I want to sell in 2 weeks, we probably missed something. We probably didn't do a good enough job. 2 weeks, oh, why? Tell me more about that. What are you going to use the money for? Why do you need to move so fast? It allows us to have that conversation, but it also knows how important and how much we want to prioritize that particular lead. Now, all leads are not created equal. You have to be able to, as you build your business and get more and more leads, you've got to be able to prioritize the ones that make the most sense for you. We try to intentionally leave our calendars open to a degree so when that person calls in and they're ready to sell, in a week or 2 or 30 days, that we can be out there that day if possible. So knowing their timeline is another indicator to their motivation on what they're trying to do and why they need to sell. And the last part, I always like to ask the condition of the property. It gets you to give them a baseline of what they expect, what we should expect to see when we go to that house. If they say it's in pristine condition, it's awesome. We go out there and I look up in the ceiling, there's a friggin' hole all the way through the sunroof, and it's actually not a real sunroof. What you're gonna find is that you can actually talk to them. Well, why don't you tell me about this? Well, I was kind of embarrassed. You'll find a lot of people will kind of be deceitful over the phone about this, and I don't think it's on purpose. I think they're more embarrassed about why their property's in such bad condition. So that's why we advocate the next part, which is schedule a next step on every single initial inbound call, and ideally it's an appointment. Whether or not you think that motivation is there, I always tell our team to book an appointment. And the reason we do that is it is much, much, much easier to tell somebody over the phone, hey, I want to make this amount of money. Hey, my house is in perfect condition. If I'm sitting across the couch from you and I'm looking at the stuff that's going on, not being rude about it, but if I'm sitting there talking about this with you in your home, you can get some pretty substantial reductions from what they say on the phone. It's a lot easier to be rude, mean, and just not a pleasant person on the phone because you have that phone between you. When you're staring somebody in the eye and you've built that rapport and you've talked to them and tried to understand their problem, when you're out there, you can do a much better job of solving that problem and being able to explain why our price is going to be less than what they probably expected. So the lead intake team also does some follow-up. We try to keep this out of their hands as much as possible. If we're answering live and we're doing a good job of booking appointments, they shouldn't have a whole lot of follow-ups to do. But there does come times that we do have to follow up. They weren't ready to schedule for one reason or another. That's your intake persons. Their objections and their sales and their closing is closing an appointment. So overcoming those objections about why you can't get out there or when you can't get out there, that's their job is to overcome that. But sometimes people just will not schedule an appointment. So those are the people that we want to keep following up with. We personally use Podio, and we use that as a follow-up system. So whenever we don't schedule an appointment, everyone and every single lead has a next step. If we didn't connect on an initial call, maybe they called after hours, maybe they called through, we use that answering service as our backup service if for some reason our phone people can't answer live. If they didn't connect on that initial call, we want to be able to get in touch with them as soon as possible. So we're going to continue to follow up with them. Even if they went to that answering service, they typically don't do the best job in the world of gathering all the information that we want. They gather the surface level stuff, but they don't give us everything that we're hoping to get, and they really don't build rapport. They're reading the script. Ongoing touches. So what we do in terms of trying to reach out to people through either our inbound team or our acquisition manager, phone calls. Everyone knows how to use a phone. Text message, you'd be surprised. We always start with a call and follow up immediately with a text. Leave them a voicemail, say, hey, in case doing text message, a little bit better communication style for you, I'm going to send you a text and maybe even an email if you happen to have it. Usually if you haven't been in contact with them, you don't have that, but I always follow up with a text immediately. You'd be surprised at how many people will respond to a text but won't answer your phone call. Personally, I like to talk on the phone more than I like to text, but I feel like I'm a dinosaur now when it comes to that stuff. And then the last part is email. Email, if you can get that, is great because then you can turn that onto different follow-up systems. You can start doing some of those long-term follow-up campaigns that can really help you stay in front of people for a long period of time. But once again, the text and email is a little bit passive way for them to be able to stay in touch with you without them actually having to engage with you directly. Because sometimes people are scared of salespeople, right? We overcome every objection. We don't take no for an answer. We're going to break down every single door. That's my specialty. Yeah! Just kick it right through that front door and help solve their problem. But people get intimidated by that. How many people in here have been with that salesperson that won't say no for an answer? Right? That scares everybody. Nobody wants that. we try to be very friendly. There's a certain point in time where you do have to be a little more aggressive in terms of closing, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But a lot of people like to return text messages and emails because they know they can just stop the communication whenever they feel like it there. How long do we usually follow up? I love 7 touches. That's pretty standard across most marketing and sales campaigns. If you take 7 touches, you usually get a lead to convert. We try this as much as we can. Not every person is going to end up converting, but we make sure we get to that minimum amount. It usually starts off with a phone call, text, phone call, text, phone call, text the first 3 days. Then I space it out 1 day. Then I call the next day. Space it out 2 days. Call that following day. Space it out 3 days. Call again. And then 1 more week. And then we kick them onto our long-term extended follow-up systems. We've been able to build that out through Podio, so once they get to that stage, we automatically turn it over to that. Some of them are text messages, some include emails. We haven't done a great job yet setting up a voicemail system. We do like a monthly blast, but it's not in coordination as much with some of our other systems that we're working on. But once we get that, and Andy talked about this in great depth, so I might kind of surface level some of this stuff. Once we get that appointment scheduled, we always make our acquisitions manager call that person within 24 hours of a booked appointment because we want them to take over. The inbound team, they're okay at sales, but they're not pure sales people necessarily. This acquisitions person is the one that you're able to confidently believe can go out there and close a deal for you. So when they call, they're going to reset that call. That's the first thing that we want them to do is that confirmation call. We're going to call them starting off saying, hey, I'm just calling to touch base with you and confirm that this time's still good. If for some reason there's a conflict in their calendar or it's a more motivated person than we thought, they can move that schedule up. If it's a less motivated person than we thought, they can also move that back. It allows them to have some flexibility when it comes to their schedule. But we're calling to confirm that appointment, and it opens the door for us to talk a little bit more. We want to introduce ourselves and start building rapport. So when we are building rapport, we're really trying to dig in deep on why they're trying to sell their house. There's so many other things that are irrelevant, but all we want to do is why do you want to sell your house? How quick are you looking to sell it? And what are you hoping to get for it? The more we can ask why, the better we're going to do. On the phone, I'm not too aggressive with it because I don't want to kill a deal before I get out there. I'm much better in person. I can sit across from somebody, do the mirroring techniques and things like that. A lot of good salespeople can do that. And it's a lot harder to say no to somebody when you're sitting across the table from and being able to actually justify why we're making the offer we're making. So we need to start that rapport process. The phone person got the surface level motivation, so we can cut right past that. On this call, we're going to go, okay, you told us this, this, and this. Well, tell me more. That's the easiest question, easiest follow-up question yes. Tell me more about that. You go, anything else? Can you tell me even more? Or why? Use those types of prompt questions. You don't want to say much. You want to listen a lot. We really want to understand their story. Andy had a great way of communicating that. I've got a lot of these sales things that I have ingrained, just natural reaction. But when he used this phrase, I found it to be a great way to communicate that with our sales team is we want to understand their story. Tell me the story of how you got here and where you want to go. Why are you thinking of selling? Oh, that's interesting. How did that happen? Why did that happen? What is the result that you're looking for? So now we have some ideas and some clues on how we can solve that problem. And the last part is we want to make sure we set the proper expectations for that appointment. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, are you going to be ready to make a decision when I come out there? Doesn't have to be yes. I'm more than happy to take a no, but I need to make sure that when I come out there and I make you an offer, you're ready to say yes or no. Because I look at a lot of properties. I can't necessarily hold this money open for you. I can't make this offer forever. So I want to make sure that you're in a position where you're ready to make that decision. And what that does for a lot of people is weeds them out. It either says, yes, I'm ready to make a decision, or no, I'm just kind of hoping to see what you pay. Well, unfortunately, we're not an appraisal service. There's people you can pay for that. If you decide you do want to sell your house, please give us a call back. So what we want to do is get that upfront commitment that they are ready to make a decision, they're truly ready to sell. And then the last part is answer any questions. Hey, do you have any questions for us? I realize that you probably haven't sold a whole lot of houses. You probably haven't bought a lot of houses. And this might be a scary or confusing time for you. Is there anything I can answer your question or anything I need to know so I can be best prepared for this meeting with you? So that really is used to try and put them at ease and also for us to gather information. It's a give and take. We both have information from each other that we want, and we've got to make it a best relationship that we can to make it a win-win. Because if someone's losing, then it's not truly a great, effective sales technique. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens, but really the goal is always to try and solve their problems. The property analysis part, Andy nailed it right on the head. I mean, I stole this literally from him. He's got a YouTube video from his Treehouse Investments that goes right through this. Pull the public record database, get the information, pull the ARV comps, pull the CCV. That's what we consider, grandma's house. It's going to pass FHA inspection. You might want to carpet and paint it. You might not, but it will pass. It's serviceable. You can live in it. We also look for that target number. So we have our person, kind of estimate what the cost is going to be to do renovation based on what they saw. Heard on from the phone call with them, but it allows them to kind of have an idea of where that maximum allowable offer should be at and kind of where we're going to go for it. It's much like Andy said, right? Where's your truth? So we want to know what that number is going to look like and basically try and build as much profit in there as we can that we can justify. And then I also have them start to fill out an appointment lead sheet. It's a pretty simple document that has expected repair costs because I don't know if I've ever been in a house that didn't need carpet or paint, so they can build that out. They can have that expense in. They fill it out. They put how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, the square footage. A lot of the information we have is based on square footage. So if it takes too much time, or not too much time, if they have this prepped out, they don't have to necessarily do that much work when they're on the appointment. They can be there. They can be in the moment. They can be focused, understand the motivation of the situation for that seller. And really what this is for them is a quick reference for information while in the appointment, because I don't want them rifling through their phone or not being prepared. If they're doing all this work up front, they're able to go out there and be confident that they know everything that there is to know about this house. And having confidence in that is extremely, extremely important at you being able to present that confidence to them as a person. So if I'm out here and I'm trying to tell you that I can only pay X for your house, and I'm confident in that because X, Y, Z things, if you feel my confidence, you're going to be less confident in your reasoning behind that. So knowing your information gives you a level of confidence that allows you to make those types of offers that we have to make as investors, because it only works for certain ways. I mean, we really run on data. Now we sell on emotion, we run our business on data. So what do we do once we go on the appointment? Once again, it's a recurring thing. Build rapport. People buy or sell to people that they like. It's common, right? Everybody knows that. And people buy on emotion. So the more that you can understand them and get them to like you, they're going to give you more of those reasons that they are really looking to sell. Why are you trying to sell your house? This is great here. Why would you even want to move? They're going to give you more information. The more that you can connect with them on a personal level, the more information they're going to give you so you can solve their problem. And I know a lot of people always say, oh, the investors, you're stealing their house, you're doing this, you're taking advantage of people. No, we're solving a problem. And the better we are at uncovering those problems and talking with them on an emotional and deeper level, the better we're going to be at able to solve that problem for them, right? It's not about money. If it's only about money, then we're not the right solution. Go list with an agent. You can take your time and your energy to renovate your house, make it look beautiful. That's fine. We solve our different problems. You don't have time. You don't have energy. You have something wrong that I can help you solve. And the way I solve that problem is you selling your house to me. And I can take these pain points away from you. Building rapport allows us to get to that real frank conversation. I've said it a few times here. What you want to do is ask why as much as possible. You don't want to talk much. You want to listen more than you talk, and you always want to keep following up with why. Why? I heard someone say it on a podcast or something. If you ask 3 times the question why to the same response they give you, you're going to get to the true answer. So, oh yeah, I just want to sell my house to make a little bit of money. Well, why? Well, I want to go on vacation, or I can't keep up with repairs. Oh, well, tell me more about that. Why do you want to do that? If you keep asking that question why, they're going to just keep giving you more and more and more, because people are uncomfortable repeating themselves sometimes. That's why silence is sometimes the best question. What? Tell me more about that. Just stare at them. Be quiet. People that break the silence, and that's part of my closing tactics, people that break the silence are usually the ones that lose. So listen more than you talk, ask why as much as possible, and then the way I kind of ease through all this is, hey, why don't you just give me a tour of your house, right? How's this work? Give me a tour of your house. You know better than me. Why don't you tell me the things that I should be aware of, that I need to work on, and things like that. And while we're walking around, explain to me what's going on. So I'm doing all this building rapport. I'm also going through their home, taking a look at things, writing things down. I always like to press on things with my pen. For some reason, that makes people, I'm not going, hey, that looks awful. I just going, I'm going to write it down. They know exactly what I'm pointing at, and they know exactly what we're doing, but I'm not making it an uncomfortable thing. And a little trick I forgot to include in here is always say something nice about their house. If they're dealing with a lot of investors, all they're doing is say, oh, this is the worst, that's the worst, that's the worst. You have an ugly house. Man, I can't believe you still live here. Right? How does that make you feel? I've got the same cabinets as every single house I've ever walked into. It's amazing. You go into any house, I've got the same exact cabinets at my house. Man, these are nice, but if I was going to sell my house, I've got to update these. You know, I love them, they work, they're functional, but these millennials that are buying all these houses, man, they're lazy. I'm a millennial. But they're lazy as heck, right? They want everything perfect. They don't want to do a single thing. We just got to build that picture for them. And giving them that tour, we can look through that, we can walk through it, and we can kind of relate to that problem. Because I'm sure all of us have stuff in our own house that can be improved upon, right? And I don't think anyone has a perfect anything. And always take notes. What we're really trying to find out, and I know I probably sound like a broken record at this point, most about their motivation, their why, and their timeline. These are the big key things that we really need to understand and dig as deep as we possibly can so we can solve that problem. General rehab notes are another thing we want to take notes on. You don't need as much detail as you think. I know that there's a lot of calculators and sheets and charts and stuff like that out there. It's not that hard to estimate renovation costs, especially if you're going to wholesale it. But for the most part, you hit big chunks. And Mike taught me this, and it's great, right? A kitchen in Michigan, so I'm going off what I know. In Michigan, a kitchen is usually $4,000 to $7,000. If it's a bigger kitchen, I go towards 7. If it's a smaller kitchen, I go towards 4. If it's a rental, it's like 4 to 5. Bathrooms. A brand new bathroom in Michigan is about $2,500. $1,500 for a half bath. Boom. Flooring. $3. That's on the high side, but I like to build in a little bit of cushion, and I usually do that with the flooring and the paint. Same thing, $3 for paint. It's way higher than we probably end up paying, but it helps catch some of the extra stuff. You know, HVAC, $2,500, $3,000. So you just big chunks of projects, really what you're looking for, and that allows you to not overanalyze and overthink everything. And then the last part is before we get to the closing and negotiation point, we're going to recap everything that we just talked about, the entire discussion, because we want to make sure that we're on the same page as them. Hey, Mr. Seller, you told me this, this, and this. You're looking for this, and I can try and solve that problem. Is that accurate? Is that what you're looking for? And confirm that before you go to the next point, which is where we end up making our offer. I always try and get them to give me their number when I'm walking around on the phone first, and then when we're giving that tour. So remind me, what were you hoping to get for this again? Because they'll try and say no, but if you get them talking on the appointment, and you say, oh, remind me, what were you telling me that you wanted for this again? They'll often let it slip there. I don't care what they want for their house. I just want them to get it out there and say it, because whatever I offer is going to be what I offer. But when we get them to say it first, it just gives us a little more power. Well, I know you're hoping to get this, but here's why I can't. So we want to recap the entire discussion, make sure that we understand what their pain points are, that they're in affirmation with that with us. They agree with us that these are the things that they want solved. Now we're going to try and solve that problem. So now we're going to negotiation and getting that contract, right? That's where we get paid, getting that thing inked up. So once again, recap what you saw in the home, highlighting the updates that are required. So you have these problems. I can solve that by buying your house. But for me to buy your house, I've got to do X, Y, and Z, which we talked about in this appointment. What I'm going to be able to do is basically pay, and here's the trick. It's hard, and it takes sometimes experience to learn this. I want to make an offer as low as humanly possible without them throwing me out that front door. As close as I can. I've been thrown out the front door a few times because I went too low. But basically, you want to make an offer that you can justify as low as you can and just explain why you came up with it. It's going to take us to do a kitchen, a bathroom, all the flooring, all the paint, and we're heading into the winter. In Michigan, that's a big deal. And based on all that information, and I've got to make a little bit of money on this as well, we're going to be around this price. They typically don't say yes to that. But every now and then they do. So sometimes you get a ripping contract just because you made an uncomfortable offer. And like I said in the beginning, if you're not doing things that are uncomfortable, you're probably not growing. So we've got to make those uncomfortable offers. We're investors. And as investors, we've got it at a deep enough discount that we can make money on it. That's the only way we can help. Because if we buy it too high and we lose money every single time, we're not buying many people's problems for very long. So we make that offer and explain how we came up with it. And then I just go, so what do you think? Sit there. Do not say a word. They're talking next. No matter what, they've got to tell you what they think. Most of the time, they're going to tell you no. Oh, okay. Well, what's the best you can do? And then you're quiet again. Make them give you their number. Because with that low offer, what you're doing is anchoring them. You're set at this point. This is your expectation. This is where I want to be at. Anything higher than this, they've won. People want to have a win, right? Nobody technically wants to just go, hey, yeah, I'll sell your house for my $100,000. It's worth $400,000, and they don't know that. You go out there, you want $100,000? Sweet, here you go. If you get too eager, they're like, wait, I think I just got hosed. Somehow something's wrong. They want to have that back and forth. They need a little bit of the conflict. So you ask them what the thoughts are on the offer. They say no, typically. Sometimes they say yes. And then you go, oh, what's the best you can do? And that's really where the negotiation begins. Now you have put them at a lower price point. Even if they said they wanted 100,000, we're trying to offer them 40. Now they say 40, and they're going to be, well, I can't go much. Sometimes just trying to split the difference right in the middle. So we try to put it at a point where it's low enough that we can come up and still hit our numbers. And this is the hardest part, is the closing. You've got to ask for the business. Not enough people do this. So, what do you think about this? Or what are you feeling? Close. Are you ready to make a decision right now? I'm giving you this offer. Can you say yes? Can you say no? Why can't you say no? I mean, why can't you say yes to this right now? So we made them offer. They don't like it. I'm asking them, well, what's the best you can do? They come down typically pretty drastically. If not, say, okay, well, hey, this just isn't the right fit for us. I would tell you, we don't buy every single house we walk into. So here, I'm going to try and help you the way I can. But we've got to try and close that deal and ask them for yes. And if they don't say yes, we've got to try and uncover why. What's uncomfortable about this? Is it only the price? You don't think the value of maybe not getting what you're hoping for, but I'm doing A, B, and C for you? That doesn't work. You've got to have a conversation. The more rapport you have, the easier it is to have that conversation. So when they say yes, sign the paperwork. Start working through that. If they say no, we've got to continue that negotiation. How come? How can we come to a resolution? I want to buy your house. What you'll find, and here's one of the tricks that I find to be extremely successful, it's taking away the offer in a way that's not too aggressive. So what I do with a lot of people is, hey, I want to think about it, I need to talk to somebody, and I know other people use like the right of rescission contracts. What I find pretty successful is, hey, I totally get that. You can't make a decision right now, and I completely understand. Unfortunately, I can't keep offers open after I leave this house, because I got 2 more appointments today, and I've got 12 this week, and I'm buying 2 or 3 more houses, and I cannot earmark this money unless you're ready to say yes. So there's a chance when you call me back, if you call me back, that the money's there, but there's also another chance that it's not. And I'm not trying to say it in a way to threaten you, but it's the reality of this. I only have a finite amount of resources. Even though if we're wholesaling, we don't. We really do in a certain capacity, right? We've got to be able to take away our offer, because there might be a way that maybe we don't wholesale, but we do have a certain amount of money that we can use to raise for this particular project. But taking that away makes them scared of loss. A lot of people are more afraid of loss than they are of winning something. So if we can take that away from them in a capacity that they are like, oh no, this sounds like a good offer. I kind of want to say yes, but I want to think about it and I need to talk. All right, forget it. I'm ready to make a decision. And when they do call us back, if they do kind of say no, well, I don't know if I can make that same offer anymore. Do you have any wiggle room? Now you're in the position of power if they call you back, because now they're like, oh, wait, I wish I would have done that. Well, Mr. and Mrs. L, I actually bought one yesterday after I left your house. I kind of told you this might happen. So it allows you to maybe wiggle a little bit more out, or make them feel grateful that you're still able to offer that to them. We want to sign the purchase agreement right there, then on the spot, and then also explain the next steps. Because when people are confused and they're not communicated with, they have a much higher likelihood of falling out. They might flake on you, they might disappear, they might say, hey, I changed my mind, I don't want to sell my house anymore, or someone else came in here and they offered me more. If we explain the next steps that, hey, we're getting this contract, I'm going to send you an email with a copy of it, our disposition manager and transactional coordinator are going to reach out to you, we're going to have some of our contractors and investing partners come take a look at your property, and you might see this online because part of the way we market is using the MLS, going on Craigslist, Zillow, things like that. By the way, that's on us. We'll pay all the fees, all the commissions. As long as we can get you your number, we're going to be doing this stuff. So don't worry about what it comes up on, because sometimes we go a little bit higher price point to build in some of the renovation costs or try to negotiate because people like to beat us up. So these are little things that we're going to value add to them, but they know what's happening next, so they're not confused. And then they're not scared about what's going to happen. And if you're in the dark and a confused mind always says no, the more we can explain to them what's happening, the better they're going to be and the more secure that contract's going to be for us. So once an appointment ends, typically what we hope is under contract, but unfortunately, more often than not, it doesn't close. And that's where we update Podio, transition to our disposition team. That's kind of once we have it under contract. If we're still working on it, there's a few different things. We schedule the appropriate next step. If you leave that appointment and they said no, what's the next step, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? When are you ready to make a decision? When should I follow up with you? Put that in your calendar. Hold them to it. So if I call you this day, you're ready to tell me yes or no. And no is fine, but I can't hold this open forever. And like I said, I might not be able to hold it open until this time. So always schedule the next step and put it in whatever your system is for CRM or follow-ups, and always, always, always have a next step. If it's a retail lead, we work with a local agent. We refer all of them to him. I'm an agent as well, so I get a referral fee of like 25%. So we always try to monetize every lead that we can, and that allows us to really lead with the seller that we're trying to solve their problems. So a lot of times we do end up referring leads to agents because we go in their house and it's perfect. They don't really have a really motivating seller, but I want to go on every single appointment I can because sometimes they do. So if we update Podio, it automatically does that, sends it over to our retail agent, not much man hours in our effort there. And the last part, if it's not viable, we put them on our extended follow-up system. So we start texting them, start emailing them, basically until they tell us to go away. We're gonna email them, text them for a year. So that's kind of the front to back system that we use. It's been very successful for us. I don't know how much time I have, if I can do questions, or should it just be at the round table?
42, 1, 40.
Okay, so that's what this timer's for? Okay, well,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna
what
be,
that thing is in front of you right there?
yeah, so that's why I just realized that. I was too busy trying to engage. Well, it looks like I don't have too much time to answer questions, but I will be at a round table. Please feel free to reach
we can
out.
take 2 questions, though.
Do some questions?
We can do 2 questions.
Okay, 2 questions. Who's got them?
What's that? Oh, the mics? Yeah. The mics! Sorry.
Got one over here. I think a mic's coming up the...
I heard you say something like you said you're not appraisal business. If they won't give you a price, what do? They're like, well, you tell me your price.
So in those particular scenarios, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in our experience, we don't buy from houses people that don't know what they sell. If you don't know what you want to sell your house for, how can I buy it? Unfortunately, we've got a lot of people that do want to sell their house and are ready and have an idea of what they want. So when you're ready, please give us a call back. We'll touch base from time to time. And when you have an idea of what you think you might want for the house, then we'll be able to come out there and schedule an appointment.
So do you get a number from them over the phone before you ever go out?
Typically, yes.
So you know if they're way off in La La Land, it's not worth your time?
Yeah, but for the most part, if they're in La La Land, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've gotten $100,000 reductions just going out there and talking with people. On the phone, it's way easier to say, I want more, right? It is. When you're walking through the house, it's a lot harder for someone to go, yeah, my house is worth $1 million when the floor is cracked, it looks like crumb, there's a hole in the ceiling, there's no fixtures, there's wires out there, and they're sparking everywhere. It's a lot harder to say, oh, yeah, this is a great price for that. Seriously?
So last question, would you ever give a price if they won't, or is that like if they don't give you a price, they're not going to do the deal anyway?
I mean, there's been times where I've given prices. In my experience, I don't know if I've ever gotten a deal from someone that wasn't giving me a number first. I mean, I still do it. I'm waiting for that time, because if we can't get them a number that makes sense, and usually what I'll preface is like, hey, I understand it doesn't seem like you're looking, that you know what you want for the house. As an investor, I don't know if this is something you even consider, but I'm probably going to be around this number. What are your thoughts? No, I would never take, oh man, then you should talk to an agent. It sounds like a homeowner will pay more than you and I would say that, look, a homeowner's gonna pay more than me every single day of the week. But I don't care about appraisals. I don't care about inspections. I don't care about dealing with agents. I don't care about showings and all of this stuff. So there's a lot of downfall that comes to that. And I always kind of tell them, look, when you hire an inspector, when you have an agent, guess what an inspector's job is? It's to find stuff, and guess what they always do? They find stuff.
Sounds like you passed off some of your leads to a realtor to possibly have as a listing. And if that's true, what's your criteria for doing that or keeping them in your CRM as a long-term follow-up?
We do both. When we kick it over to the agent, we still hit them with a long-term follow-up. So we give them their opportunity to list it and call them and then do whatever they do on the back end for marketing and long-term follow-up, and then we hit them on the investment side. And what happens, not a ton of times, but sometimes, is the person calls a few agents and they tell them, hey, in order for us to sell your house, you're gonna have to do this, this, and this. And it's like, I don't feel like doing that, or they don't have the money to do that. So, and I always try and preface this, if you talk with an agent, they're gonna tell you what they think they can get for the house. I'm gonna tell you what I can actually buy it for. They can list your house for $1 bazillion, doesn't mean you're gonna get it. And an agent can say, I can list this house for you for this, but that doesn't have any guarantee involved with it, and they're typically gonna tie you up for a long period of time where you have to pay them a commission, even if you end up calling me back and selling it to me.
Very good. One more quick one since I still have the mic. How often does your agent convert those to listings?
We just kind of, we've gotten probably 15 conversions. We just kind of built out the system that was a little more automated, and we've had a little bit of a turnover issue from the beginning of the year, so a lot of those leads that should have been passed along weren't. So that's more on us and our systems, and we're working through it, but it's a decent conversion. I mean, but if they're calling us, they're interested in selling, but they might not necessarily be at the right time to list it sale, to a homeowner. So a lot of times with a cash offer, they think, hey, I can just sell this real quick and not have to deal with anything. And when we bring them back to reality, they might not be quite ready to list it yet either. So they're still working, and that's why I kick almost everything over to them that we don't convert. So we're hitting them from both angles and just remind them they need to sell their house.
A question here. I thought I heard you say that if a property is worth $400,000 and you would be willing to offer them $100,000 if it was worth $400,000 to see if you could get that. Am I correct?
That might have been a little bit of hyperbole. So I will make as low of an offer that I can actually justify without getting thrown out the front door.
Without what?
Getting thrown out of the front door.
So, but you're a real estate agent, right?
Correct.
Okay. So how do you deal with the fiduciary duty as a real estate agent?
I'm not listing their house. I have no fiduciary
No,
responsibility
but you're not listing
to
the
them.
house, but you're a real estate agent, so you still have a fiduciary duty even though you have not signed a contract. As a real estate agent, you have a fiduciary duty. If you get that property for $300,000 when it's worth, can you to me?
Yeah, so in our contract, we tell them I'm an agent and I'm trying to buy this as an investment for the intent of selling it at a profit. So that is I'm acknowledging to them that I'm an agent and I don't have any fiduciary responsibility to them because I'm not trying to list their house and I'm not trying to sell it for them. I'm trying to buy it. I disagree with that, and I've talked to my broker, and I've talked with our board. But fiduciary responsibility, yes, we're not trying to steal their house. We're telling them this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy it as an investment, and we're trying to make a profit on it. And I acknowledge that, and I disclose that I am an agent, and have had no issues in the 100-plus deals we've done.
Hey. All right. Woo! Things are getting exciting in here, huh? Huh? Good. It's a good event, right? All right. So was that good stuff, guys? Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you guys. Okay. So our next guest, this guy, we have a special relationship. He's been with me from the beginning of my first business venture. When I went out to Bakersfield to sell that satellite dish, he was there with me. From a young age, Stephen, he was a things person. He was always good at fixing the dishwasher, all these things. I couldn't fix things at all. I still can't. I was a kind of a people person, right? So when I started my satellite dish business, it was perfect. I was running the business. He was installing satellite dish. We had other guys out selling them. But when crap hit the fan, and we had all that debt, and we had to move and fired a couple sales guys, Stephen was out there in Bakersfield. It was his first time being away from home, being away from mom, right? And he needed to figure out how to make some money, and I didn't want to leave him hanging, so it's like, you're gonna have to learn how to sell. It's like, no way, I don't sell. I don't do that, right? And he tried it, at first it was tough, and eventually kind of got it going a little bit. Since that time, he's gone and done summer sales programs, but that was kind of like a summer thing while he was going to college, right? And it was about 3.5 years ago he reached out to me. He was doing at a dead-end insurance job. Just wasn't, he's like, he could have built up over time, but it just wasn't working out for him. He's like, bro, I'm going to start this house flipping thing, this house flipping wholesaling. And I knew he'd just gotten married, his beautiful wife back there, Erin, and they have the Eliza, she was on the way, right? And I was like, no, bro, like, I didn't want to be responsible, right? Because we all know that not everyone makes it in this business. I'm being honest, right? Not everyone takes the steps they need to take. And I was concerned because I knew he didn't have a whole lot saved up. And I was really worried about this, but he's like, I'm going to do it no matter what, with or without you. So I'm like, okay. So I gave him a few tips, and he just went off and did his own thing. Didn't listen to me most of the time, but that's okay. Now he started listening to podcasts, started surrounding himself with people like Andy, started taking action, and he started to make it happen. At first he was buying houses for me, and then one day he stopped selling me houses. I call him, I'm like, bro, why aren't you selling me houses? You just don't pay enough, bro. He had gone out and built this like amazing buyers list where he was selling houses like, no, it's too tight, no one's gonna buy it. Boom, he'd sell it and make 10 grand. I was like, you punk. Anyway, he got to a point where he had created this little system using bandit signs and wholesaling, and got to a point where he was making like $30,000, $40,000 a month, and then he gets up and moves. I was like, what? Like, you have this huge buyer's list, you're like dominating Utah, other than Andy. I don't know if Andy kicked him, I don't know what happened, but he goes up and moves to California, like a very competitive area, Northern California area where Aaron is from. Like, what are you doing? You finally got it after all the hard work, you made it happen. And I was worried, an older brother, I care about him, right? So what does he do? It took him a little bit to get things back going. Totally reinvented himself, doing a totally different model. Now he's flipping, and then he was wholesaling. And he's on track the next 12 months or so to net over $1 million, close to $2 million, right? Crazy, 3.5 years ago is when he got going. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you my bro, Stephen Williams. He loves public speaking, by the way. It's his favorite.
Yeah. Actually, I came out here this morning, walked in, came in, I saw Bill Allen speaking, I think. Turned around, walked back out, went to my room. I was like, I better prepare something for these guys. So, pretty good group here, pretty excited to share what I have with you guys. Okay, so here we go. So Justin kind of talked a little bit about my background a little bit. And I didn't really realize how much sales experience I really have until I kind of wrote this out this morning. And so when I first started, I was actually working for Justin, and we were doing Dish Network installs, and our sellers ended up just not selling for us. So I was kind of forced to get out and start selling Dish Network if I wanted to make an income. And I remember going on that first appointment, knocking on that first door, just being terrified, kind of like I am right now. But it's just like the most scary thing ever, and people would like slam doors on my face because I wasn't confident, I didn't know what I was doing. But then after I kind of got the hang of that, I remember selling 3 accounts on one street and making more money with sales than I did installing for like 3 days within like a couple hours. Since then, I never looked back, and every job that I had has been basically sales related just because of the power of that. And so then I started negotiating short sales for Justin way back when he got into real estate. Did door-to-door sales with Verizon Fiber Optics, and then sold for Active Pest Control, where I really learned a lot of great things on how to sell. Worked at a Prosper call center, sold insulation, and then started the property casualty insurance, and that's when things started going really badly for me. Just got married, having a hard time trying to figure out how to pay the bills, and that's when I kind of reached out to Justin, and then that kind of leads to the real estate. So, so basically, last month, just to kind of give a little background, it was an extra good month for me. Purchased 4 homes, wholesaled 2, with a projected profit of over $360,000 for the month. And so, yeah. Yeah. And so basically, what my presentation is going to be about is how I'm buying at such a steep discount to get these kind of spreads. We'll be talking about taking the call, setting the appointment, preparing for the appointment, meeting the sellers, and then resolving concerns, and then getting the contract signed. So, yeah, but I want to go over a couple misconceptions that people have about various markets, and misconceptions that I had when I first moved to the Bay Area, and this could be relatable to all markets. I remember I first moved out to the Bay Area, I sent out like 5,000 postcards, and just got a bunch of calls from people who really didn't want to sell the house. And then I went to my first meetup meeting, and basically it was the wrong people that I was surrounded with. And they basically were telling me that nobody's renovating houses in the area and it's just not possible. Coming to find out, the meetup group their whole intention was to find investors to purchase their turnkey properties like out of state. And I didn't realize that, so they were telling me you can't flip houses here and it just doesn't work. And so that was just kind of very crushing for me. Just moved to this new market to be with my wife's family. And so in my mind, I believed that the only way for me to make this work was to do it virtually. I was flipping houses in like Denver, Colorado, wholesaling properties in Utah, tried out like 3 different virtual markets just because I didn't believe that I could do it in my own backyard. Make a long story short, I ended up actually getting 2 deals from that mailing like 6 months later. And then I realized, okay, there might be something here. And I just doubled down and started doing deals in my own market. So I think I covered most of that. Oh yeah, there's just excuses for it. I hear people, like every single market that I've been in, it seems like it's the most competitive market when I'm talking with people. And so it's kind of just crazy, the psychology there. But if you have the right skills, or if you hire somebody who has the right skills, you can be competitive in any market. And I truly believe that. And so just to kind of go over 2 of the deals from last month. So this is Carter Ave. I purchased this house. So we just closed on this actually yesterday, but it was from last month's mailing. Purchased it for $269. Repairs are about $40,000. It was built in 1990, so it's a great house. The after repaired value is $450. Money cost is about $18,000. And then after you subtract like the closing costs to go resell, the projected profit on this one will be about $97,000. And you see, it's not because it's $1 million house or this ginormous house. It's because I was able to buy it way below market. Some of the aces that I gave is the seller wanted some time to move out so that they could find a place to live. They could leave anything that they didn't want behind. And then also, I covered all the seller's closing costs for them as well. Oh, so ace. So I guess that's just kind of a term that I picked up from door knocking. But an ace is just something that, like, a perk that you give to the seller to help. Like, it's something you keep in your back pocket for like when you need it in negotiation, I guess. And I'll get more into that later. I'll talk about aces later. This is Florida Street. It came with a house and then an additional lot that was worth about $60,000. Purchase price $262, repairs about $75. After repaired value $470. Money cost about $20,000. Projected profit on this one's about $86,000. So again, it's just because we're buying it at a steep discount, and the sellers are happy and everybody's happy. Everyone's getting what they want. And there's a few aces I threw out. I throw out a lot of aces when I'm negotiating. You don't necessarily have to, but I'll let you know I'll go over how I kind of protect myself, especially when doing letting the sellers live in the property for a while afterwards. So, all right, so kind of getting into it. So it all starts, like Mike was talking and everybody else, it starts with taking that initial call. Like, this is the first contact that they're having with you, and it's very important to build that relationship on the phone. I'll take all the time that I need to get them to laugh and get them to open up and really trust me on the phone. So the most important thing is to get the sellers talking. While they're talking, do everything you can to just not say a word and just take notes. That's one thing I do really good, is because I don't really love talking. Naturally, I'm very good at just listening to the sellers and finding out what they need so that we could provide solutions for the sellers. And you also want to make sure you don't sound like like you're aggressive. And so one of the things I always do is be considerate of their time. So like if you're calling somebody and they're like kind of hesitant to open up and talk to you, a lot of times I'll say like, you know, it sounds like I caught you in the middle of something. Is there a better time to talk? And a lot of times they'll kind of open up a little bit more and say, no, now's a good time. And it kind of shows that you're not a typical salesperson just trying to plow over people and talk. So, and you want to get to know the seller and their situation. And I always like to, so through them talking, I always like to bring up relevant stories. I talk about other houses that I bought and other situations that kind of relate to the seller's current situation. Part of getting to know the seller and building rapport and kind of building pain too, I always ask them like, you know, how old's the roof? Like, you know, when was the last time the electrical was updated? Plumbing, we talked about the foundation. Last time the kitchen was updated, bathrooms, and just kind of let them talk. And if you just kind of let them talk about each of these areas, you'll start to like hear them talking about different concerns a lot of times. And then I always try to get the number out of the seller on the phone if I can. Some of the ways that I do this is I'll say like, you know, it sounds like a good property. Why would you consider selling it? And you sit there and pause and listen, and then they'll usually tell you they're paying if they're motivated. One thing that I really use a lot is I'll throw out, you know, to kind of soften, just instead of asking them how much their house is worth, I'll say like, so, you know, what do you think the property's worth in its current condition? And then just pause and kind of see if you get that out of them. And then if they still won't give a number, then sometimes I'll like just say something like ridiculous, like, you know, if you had a magic wand, how much would you like to get for the property? And then a lot of times you'd be surprised, like they won't give you a number, but then you use something like that, and then they'll kind of like, they'll like laugh and say, well, if I had a magic wand, then I'd like this. And a lot of times it's still way lower than what you would think if they're motivated. So at least you have some kind of number to negotiate from. And then this is pretty huge. So, you know, beating your competition and getting, like, so once I sense like motivation in a seller, I literally like, no matter what I have on my schedule, I drop everything and I'm meeting with that seller as quickly as I possibly can. And so a lot of times sellers might say like, they might be concerned if their house is messy or all different kind of concerns why they might want to schedule the appointment for tomorrow or the next day. And I'll always try to resolve that concern and be like, you know, I've seen everything. I've bought houses with mushrooms growing out of the carpet about this high. Like there's nothing. I look at houses for what they could be and not for what they currently are. And a lot of the times that will allow me to get into the house before my competitors. So, and then I also try to establish credibility. One of the ways that I do that is I'll say, and if you haven't bought a lot of houses, you could kind of lean off of another buyer's credibility. But I'll say, you know, because I buy so many houses, I'm able to pay more than most other investors. Because I do volume, I'm willing to take a smaller profit than a lot of other guys, or things like, there's so many different ways to build credibility. This is probably the most crucial step when you're on the phone. Every time that I go on an appointment, if I'm going to go on the appointment, I want to leave with a contract. And so it's crucial to make sure all the decision makers are at the property, not just the people who are actually on title, but anybody who might be a decision maker, who's not on title, if it's a probate property, anybody who might be related, so that you could get there and you could, you know, resolve everybody's concerns and get the deal signed on the spot. And I think Andy talked quite a bit about preparation. Before you set the appointment, or after you set the appointment, make sure to put in the time to really know what your approach is going to be once you meet with the sellers. So I know Abraham Lincoln, he said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. So go over the comps, find out exactly what data you're going to use to lead the seller to where you want to be, and kind of know how you're going to get them there before you even show up, and make sure to put the time into that. It's very important. Okay, so then at the meeting, I know Mike covered a lot of this as well. Building rapport is just so huge. You know, I'll spend 3 hours at an appointment if I have to, if the seller's not ready. And so I'll tour the property like Mike was saying. So I basically, you know, like even when I'm getting, like, so I'm at the property, I'll even kind of stand back before I'm opening the door. And then once the seller opens the door, just kind of smile. And then when you kind of approach into the property, a lot of times they'll say, okay, go ahead and check out the property or go look wherever you want. Every time I'm like, do you mind showing me around the house? And the whole time, my whole goal is to I don't even talk about the property while I'm walking around the sellers. I'm more talking about their pain points, why they want to sell, and really just kind of getting to know them, trying to build that connection with the sellers. It's very, very crucial, and I always make sure not to rush it. I don't talk numbers during that time, and really try to kind of avoid that. So, relevant stories. Yeah, and like this here, like I kind of make a joke of it, but it's like, you know, even if I don't like cats, but if they have cats, I love cats, you know, while I'm there, so. And then, so building motivation with the sellers, and then being the reluctant buyer. So the last thing, like, the worst thing that you could do is kind of like just come into the house and tell them why you could buy their house, and be like overtly aggressive about it, because then it kind of pushes the sellers away. So my whole approach is all about how can I get the sellers to want to sell the house to me, and it's been so there's a few ways to do that. Like a lot of times, like, so I'll be like walking around the house after we're talking with them, and just kind of like say the house needs a lot of work, but I'll just kind of like pound on the door, like, you know, it has good bones. Like, have you thought about fixing it up yourself and listing it? And then just kind of pause, and then they'll pour out all the reasons why they don't want to do that. If they're really motivated, they'll tell you all the reasons why they, you know, whether they don't have the money, they don't have the time, they don't want to deal with it, they just whatever. And I'll throw out, like, you know, have you thought about just renting it out? So basically, I'm trying to bring up all the concerns or all the different options that they might have, and eliminate those from them, so that I end up being their last option. And then when we come down to the close, I'm in a much better position to be able to move forward. And then, so again, then you're back in person. It's kind of redundant, but because you got to re-go through the same steps, get the sellers to give you the number. And so one of the ways, I say the same thing, what do you think the house is worth in the current condition? And then sometimes, even after this question, then if they're at a number that kind of works, then that's kind of the base point that I start the negotiation from that number. So at that point, I'd talk about, so say they say that they think the house is worth about $300,000, then I'll educate them about the cost of selling, like on the MLS. And so I'll let them know that, you know, it's about 6% in realtor fees, 3% to the listing agent, 3% to the buyer's agent, 1% in closing costs, and then, you know, the holding costs. And so usually about 8% to sell on the MLS. So I'll take that number that I got from them, and I'll subtract 8%. And then if that number works for me, then that's kind of like the number that I'll show them. And then we'll try to kind of tie it up under there. So, but if that's not enough, then I'll discover the value with the seller. And so that's part of like being prepared, doing all the comps and everything before. I'll put my like 3 best comps in my back pocket, and I'll pull them out at this time to kind of go over that with them. So, any questions so far? I feel like I'm just kind of like rambling on and on. Is this good information so far? Or? Yeah. Yeah, so what I'll do is it depends on what data you have available. So there's two different ways to work it. Like if, one of the ways you could work it is you could start with the after repaired value, and if they're analytical, you could back out all your numbers to kind of get to where you are. But a lot of times what I'll try to do is I'll find a house that needs a lot of work, like their house, if their house needs a lot of work. And so I'll find the best ones that support the number that I'm trying to go after. And so I'll have 3 of like the houses that need work, and I'll kind of show them those numbers. And so I'll discover it with them though. I'll be like, as I was running out of my office, I just kind of pulled these comps real quick. And we'll pull them out and I'll kind of go through them. This one here, it's similar to yours. It's right around the corner, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It sold for this, and kind of go through it that way. And then I'll bring up the, like I said, the cost of selling the MLS is about 8 to 10%, 3% realtor fees. So then I'll times that. So you already have that low number, then you times that by 0.92. And then you're at that point, and then you justify that number, and then you're basically asking them after that, so if I could pay you all cash, close in 2 weeks, you didn't have to pay any realtor fees, any commissions, leave anything you don't want behind, and go over any other of the giveaways that you discovered through your other conversation, whether that's, give you 30 days to live in the property rent-free, what's the least that you would consider, and then see what they say. And then sometimes you'll just be blown away by the number that they come out with, and just try to stay cool, I guess I could do that. So, or you could do a tie down. Okay, so you're saying if I could do 340,000, you'd feel good about that number. And they're like, yeah, that'd work for me. Okay, I think I could do that. Something like that. So, but yeah, don't like jump up and down and get excited or anything. And then, there's some concerns. Obviously, everything's not always that easy. Concerns do come up. Some ways to resolve some of these concerns. Sometimes do everything I can to get the number, and they just won't give it. They'll say, you're the expert. What are you willing to offer, or something like that. And I always, I put it back on the seller probably like 5 different times before, just changing the way I say it to try to get something out of them. And one of the things I use a lot, I really want what's best for you. This is your house. It's only numbers for me, and I want to be able to create a win-win. Do you have a number in mind that would work for you? And then kind of pause and kind of see what they say. And to just kind of keep on spinning it back and like acknowledge it. Sure, I understand. Like I said, I really want just what's best for you. It's worked really well for me. Sometimes sellers they're selling a house, it's a big deal. And so they're like, so how do I know that this isn't a scam? A lot of the ways that I resolve that is, so I use First American Title for my title company, and I'll just kind of explain the title process. I buy a lot of deals with First American Title. They're a nationwide company, and they're basically our middleman. I don't just show up with a suitcase full of cash. That'd be pretty cool. But I actually pay, and I explain that whole process to them, and that usually helps. Sometimes I'll pull out my phone and go through my Facebook profile and show. I have houses that I flipped on there. Oh yeah, this is my 3-year-old daughter Eliza, and kind of build rapport that way, and that usually really, really helps. So everything looks good and sounds good, but and every now and then, I always try to leave with a contract. That's my number one goal. Like I said, I'll stay there for 3 hours if I have to. But sometimes, and I think I've only done it twice this year, I could tell they really wanted to do it and they really wanted to move forward, but they were just fearful of signing something. And so I wrote at the top of the contract, seller has 24 or 48 hours to cancel this agreement for whatever reason by sending an email to Steve here. And then, so what that does, then it resolves their fear of signing right away. They signed the agreement, and out of those 2 deals, they never called back, and everything went through fine, and they were happy with that. So, and then I need to talk to my spouse. That comes back to the phone. Make sure everybody's at the appointment when you get there. So, or get them on the phone if they're not there. So some of the ACEs that I throw out a lot of times. So again, the ACEs are the things that you put in your back pocket if you need them. And because they all end up costing more money, so you don't want to use these unless you have to. But the seller vacate agreement, I use this one a lot because a lot of times, sellers either need to, it takes time to go. So my goal, because I'm purchasing these houses myself, so my main goal is to close on as quick as possible. And so I usually try to close within 2 weeks, even if they're willing to close like a month or 2 later just to get the deal done. And so I'll do like seller vacate agreements, give them 30, 60 days, whatever they need, as long as there's enough padding in there, the numbers make sense. And so what I'll do is I'll do at least a $30,000 holdback with the title company, and the sellers don't get that until they move out. For every day past the date that they don't move out, they lose at least $200 every single day. And so that's pretty strong motivation to get them to move out pretty quickly. Another big one is, the hardest part about moving out of a house a lot of times, especially if it's like a hoarder house and they have a lot of belongings, is to just kind of take that burden off of them. And so I'll say, take anything you want, leave anything that you don't want behind. I have a crew who could take care of it. We'll either donate it or we'll throw away anything that is not salvageable. So every now and then I try to avoid this one as much as possible, but there's one that I'm working on right now where we're actually going to help the sellers move their belongings to a storage facility. So it's really kind of dependent on their situation. Larger earnest money deposit, I don't use that one too much, but it's something that you could use as well. So the earnest money deposit is basically the deposit that you pay the title company or the seller up front that you lose if you back out of the deal. If you have an inspection period, then you have that time. But if you go past the inspection period and you have an earnest money deposit, then you lose that money. So it kind of just shows that, look, I'm waiving the inspection period and I'm going to give you a $7,000 earnest money deposit. It shows that you're serious sometimes if you know your numbers and you're willing to do that. And then getting the contract signed. So one of the tactics that I really like to use a lot of times is making an offer without actually making an offer. And so to do this, I'll use things like, and I don't do this as much now, but I used to do this a lot at the beginning, and it worked extremely well. So I'd say, and I use this tactic, but this line works really well for those of you who maybe are newer and you have other people who you're working for. I'll say something like, I'm not saying I could do this. I'd have to check with my boss first. But what if I can pay you X amount? And then you just kind of sit there and listen. And then that way, if they say, yes, that would work. Basically, they can't say yes or no to an offer because you're not really making an offer. And it's kind of just a way to get some information. It's works very well. And then after I get the number back, I'll commit them to it. And I'd say, so before I call my boss, you're saying, and to make sure you understand them right, you're saying that if I could give you $300,000, let you stay in the property for 30 days, and you don't have to get rid of anything, that will work for you and you feel good about that? And then they'll say, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then you're like, okay, yeah, because I just want to make sure before I call my boss that I understand you correctly. Then you go out to your car, make the fake phone call, call the boss, and then when I'm out of the car, that's usually when I'll come back with the purchase agreement. I don't think I mentioned, but I don't like to take any purchase agreements or anything in with me at the very beginning. Just real casual from the very beginning. So then I bring that back, and then always assume the sell. Just pull out the agreement, and like, you know, if you need to negotiate it down a little bit, you could try at that point too. You know, like, you know, the numbers sound really good. My boss was hoping that we would be at like 10 grand less. What if we could meet about halfway? And kind of see what they say. And if they're like, no, that's the most I could do, be like, okay, I'm concerned about this repair here, but I think we can make it work. How do you spell your first name? And just kind of go into it, into the agreement. Yeah, then after you have the contract, that's when I do the picture, like explain like the next step. So this is after the agreement is signed and everything. I take pictures of the property, let them know that I'll be having contractors come through. So if you're wholesaling, I guess that could be your buyers. Get a lockbox on it if it's vacant, if you can, and kind of explain all that to them. And so kind of my parting words for you guys is basically either learn how to sell really well or hire a rockstar acquisitions rep, because it will make all the difference in your business. It's very, very crucial. Sharpen your axe, you know, get sales training, prepare really well for your appointments, and most importantly, don't listen to the naysayers in your market, because they will, it's easy to believe those thoughts. You could do it pretty much anywhere. So, any questions? Yeah, can we get a microphone?
Oh yes, the question is, if you don't give them a back out ace, how do you handle it if they want to back out of the contract, say the next day?
So one thing that I always do is I also do like takeaways while I'm there. And I'm like, so even after we sign the contract, I'll even do like one last takeaway and be like, you know, I really want what's best for you. Like, are you sure you want to do this deal? Because if it doesn't make sense for you, I don't want to buy it. And so by doing things like that and like what are they going to say? Like, no, I don't want to do this deal anymore, and like crumple up the paper and throw it out. Like I used to be fearful of that, but they won't do that. The one, like that house on, I think, was it Carter Way? I think I asked them like 7 times, like, because they just weren't like, they weren't communicating with me as much as I wanted. I asked them like 7 times. I'm like, you know, are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you positive? And so I don't really get people coming back later trying to back out from the deals. Yeah, I'd let them. I mean, I'd try to resolve the concern and figure out why, like, because either I didn't communicate something right, or, you know, but I mean, if someone doesn't want to sell their house to me, I'm not gonna sue them over it. Like, I haven't sued anybody or got crazy like that. I don't let them off just like easily. Like, I try to like figure out what's going on. Or you got the mic? Yeah.
How do you get your leads initially? How do you get people to call you?
So just all the ways that we're learning about here.
Okay.
And a lot of it. So Bay Area is extremely competitive. So it's probably like 7 to 10 grand per deal in marketing costs. So just a lot of marketing time. So
in a virtual market, in a virtual market, do you need to be there in person, or are you able to take care of that over the internet or over the phone?
Yes, there's a lot of ways to do that. I know there's people who actually close deals over the phone. The way that I've done it is I'll do strategic partnerships where I'll pay for the marketing, and I'll seek out like somebody who's already has a really good wholesaling business and they know how to negotiate, and I'll just handle the marketing piece and split it 50-50 that way. Other ones were people have reached out to me to like want to put out bandit signs in their market, so I'd kind of do some kind of like consulting, and so they're my boots on the ground basically. So I think it's important to meet with people in person, but I know a lot of people are having success closing deals over the phone too.
Hello, Leon here from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Oh.
So immediately I'm kicking myself, we're kicking ourselves, because we've lost deals because not all the decision makers were at the meeting. So you won't go to an appointment without all the decision makers?
Unless they have a very good reason why, and they're very motivated. But yeah, you want to make sure like that should be like, that's like crucial. Like I'll like push the appointment back if they're not all going to be there. Because if they're not there, the chances of you leaving with a signed contract, and I've done it before, like I'm not perfect.
Zero.
But yeah, you're not going to leave with a signed contract most of the time.
And the second question is that you seem to be focused on them giving the first figure. But I've never had a seller say to me, give me such a low figure. They've always anchored so high that I have to walk them backwards on a process of from Disneyland all the way down to anywhere near reality, right? So that I don't even ask them for the figure because it's such a walk down. I've got really good at it, but it's a lot of energy and I don't find that well spent. So here the question is your process leads them to that point where they're like, oh wow, I can't live in La La Land, I have to give a real figure, and then you get that low ball figure. That process is the key, or is it
so
an
I think the process is a big part of it. Like on the phone, my number one goal is to seek out motivation and find out motivation to see if I'm even going to go on the appointment. I don't even really care about the number on the phone because I know but I want to get it too, because if they're going to give me a low number, it's nice to start negotiating from a low number, then maybe my number might be higher at first. So I like to try to at least get something, because then it's like, oh, well, you know, I'm willing to, I mean, my number's here, but you're saying here, so now this is our starting point. But so yeah, the phone's the most important thing for me is motivation, and I don't always get the number, but if I sense motivation, I'm going on that appointment regardless. And then the preparation and having those comps in your pocket, the low comps that justify your number, that's when you discovered the number with the seller at that point, and especially ahead of time if you know that their number is really high. At the appointment, I'm not going to ask them for their number until I've kind of prepped them with the data that I have. And so then I'll pull out the comps and I'll be like, look, this house is very similar to yours. It sold for this price. You know, it was on the market for this long. And, you know, it needed repairs like yours as well. The cost to sell on the MLS is this. And before I'm even having that conversation, I've ran all the numbers, and I know that if I use this comp and I subtract the 8% from that, and then maybe justify an extra repair on top of that if I need to. Oh, but yes, but then we're going to have to do this. That's going to be about 10 grand. And then you kind of prep them to that, and then you go over the whole thing and then ask them the number. If they've understood what you just told them, then likely they'll come in lower, because then they'll realize that you're right, if that makes sense. Did I answer your question? I do that sometimes too. It kind of depends on, I've just found for me, like, this other approach has been more effective for me. But if it's a logical, someone who wants like data and statistics, then you could start higher and work your way back that way. It's just a different approach. They both work.
Okay, this is the last question.
In the sales literature, it said your closing ratio is so high. Is there a lot of appointments you're turning away on the phone?
Yeah, so my area is very competitive, so it's less leads, and my strongest ability, I believe, is being able to close deals on appointments. So that's the last piece of my business that I'm going to remove myself from. So I've kind of built my business around everything but acquisitions, and that's what I'm continuing to try to build at, and then I'm going to replace myself. The problem with that, though, is I have to be very selective on the appointments I go on. And so I spend a lot of time building rapport and really getting to know them on the phone. I don't close on the phone, but I usually know if they're ready to sell to me before I'm even at the appointment, or at least that they're motivated. Like this one on Florida Street, I could just tell that he was motivated and that he wanted to sell the house. So I'm there for like an hour talking to the guy. He's older. He gives me the exact number that he wants, which works for me. But about an hour into it, he's like, I'm not signing anything today. I got 2 other buyers coming later to kind of give me offers. And then I was like, okay, I need to double down and just really get to know this guy. Spent another 2 hours building rapport, talking about his garden, talking about the water that he drinks, talking about everything but the house and real estate, about his wife who he doesn't live with. I could tell you everything about this guy's life, right? And he probably doesn't know anything about mine because I'm just sitting there asking questions, listening, and really kind of building that connection with him. And then, it kind of comes down to it, and it's like, so you said you wanted the 262, and just kind of pulled out the agreement, and we just started filling it out, and he's like, I'm really glad that it was you that came here. I really appreciate the time that we spent, and I'm glad that I'm selling the house to you. So, and then he called me later on, because he's like moving all the stuff out of the house to put it out, and he was like, man, you wouldn't believe how many people wanting